Hey everybody, welcome to the channel, True Crime Stories. If you're new to the channel, please hit that like button and subscribe so you can hear more. Thanks for stopping by. Sherry Jones. Sherry Ann Jones was a young woman who disappeared from Greer, South Carolina on September the 1st, 1972. She may also use the last name Smith. Now, when Harpeth River Jane Doe, or Sherry Doe, was found, and as the years went on, and her case got some recognition in the media and on these websites, a woman came forward and said, I believe this could be my mother. My mother went missing years ago, and her name was Sherry. She was, she had ties to Tennessee, South Carolina, and Puerto Rico. Now, they thought that maybe the Jane Doe that they have found in Nashville was Native American, but it's highly possible that she was Puerto Rican. And it's also possible that she could be this Jane Doe, this Sherry Ann Jones. It's possible that she wasn't, but it got me to thinking the connection between Chattanooga. Now, there's no photograph. I could not find any photograph of Sherry Jones. She was 24 when she went missing in 1972. She was 5'3" tall and 115 pounds. Her last date of contact was September 1st, 1972, in Greenville County, Greer, South Carolina. She had black hair and brown eyes. And there was no other description of her. There was no description of any possible clothing or anything like that. Now, when this woman came forward and told police, I think this Sherry Doe could be my mother, Sherry Ann Jones. Now, someone in my comments said maybe this woman was older than what they were thinking. They were saying these men told them that they thought she was around 14 to 17. They also claimed that the girl who was supposedly traveling with her looked to be only about 14, yet she told them that they were on their way to Florida to meet her husband. I don't know if that story was even real. I don't know if this other woman ever even existed. But like I said, what got my radar up on this case was South Carolina is so much closer to Chattanooga, and if the men did travel to Chattanooga, could they have met this woman there, and maybe she traveled back to Nashville with them? Also, the picture had little Charlie and the man's phone number written down on it. Now, he told police that he gave her his phone number. He gave her this picture. He said it was the only thing he had to write on, so he handed it to her. This was the only clue that led them to any indication of who she was. And once again, I just want to say these men were never, charged with anything. Police never thought that they had anything to do with her murder or her death, and so they never charged them with anything. Sherry Ann Jones, alias Sherry Ann Smith. She was born April 29th, 1948, 24 years old, a white female with black hair and brown eyes. And it just goes on to say more of the same: unknown clothing, unknown jewelry. It doesn't say if she had any types of tattoos or marks on her body. This would be under the jurisdiction of the Greer Police Department in Greer, South Carolina. Phone number 864-848-5351. I would love to have found a photograph of her to see if she looked anything like the Jane Doe, because the Jane Doe was pulled from the river within probably 2 days of her death, of her being put in the river or going into the water. So her appearance, she was not badly decomposed. And I also got to thinking about this. Could it also have been, just like with the women in the former story that I did, there was a woman named Marie who was murdered in one of the previous stories that I did, and researched her story. A lot of people in the comments were saying it could be possible that she was undocumented. Is it also possible that this woman was undocumented, and that might be the reason why there was no this Jane Doe that went into the water? Could she have been an undocumented person? And maybe that's the reason why nobody came forward to claim to know who she was. Once again, I remind people that it was said that she had burn marks, scars on her arms that looked like they could have been from cigarette burns. Was this done to her by a parent, a guardian? Was this done to her by a partner? Or did she do this to herself? Because she and the other woman who has never been identified, or even it's never even really been established if that woman was even with her or not. They both said, according to these men, the only witnesses that the police ever had was that they had both ran away from a rehab or a mental health type facility in Minnesota. But this woman who came forward says, my mother, I think this could have been my mother, but without a photo of her. And I don't know if her family was ever able to provide a photo of her. There's really nothing I could find about anything surrounding her disappearance. Now, as someone else pointed out in the comments on that video about Shuri Doe, when I spoke about the grave markers having been moved, she pointed out that all these graves, all these people who are buried in these graves that are marked sometimes only by a number or a Jane Doe, John Doe, whatever it is that they put on unknown person, they still, just because the markers might get moved, the graves are on a map. There should have been some record of that, and it's hard for me to believe that they would have allowed someone's grave to just go lost like that. There has to be something. And even if they couldn't find the exact grave, they have to have a general idea of where she was buried. And with the police, investigating this woman's death, it seems like they would have marked that grave a little bit better. Maybe they just didn't, in 1976, maybe they just didn't have any idea that they would have to revisit that. So here's something that I do, once again, I have to apologize for the background noise. There is some work going on outside. I know the microphone's picking it up once again. But this is from Jane Doe's and Missing, 1970s through the 80s. This person writes, I'm going to repeatedly post this girl's story, partly because I have so much respect for the detective in charge of this case, Matthew Filter, and also because there is a chance that this is Sherry Ann Jones, Sherry Ann Smith Jones. There is no reason at all that she hasn't been identified. Even if she came from a broken home, someone remembers her. Even if she didn't escape from a Minnesota mental health facility, she came from somewhere and she was escaping something. We know for certain that she stayed in the Nashville area for over a week before her death. I go back to my thoughts on the fact that he gave her his phone number. Maybe she was with another girl and maybe they parted ways. Maybe the girl decided to go on back and she didn't want to go back. Maybe the girl decided to go on to Florida without her. Or maybe this story was bogus to begin with. But like I said, she was supposedly picked up hitchhiking near Nashville on her way to Florida, yet 10 days later, she's found in Nashville dead. Now the fact, once again, let me go back to this. If they could find this woman's body in this cemetery and exhume her body and get DNA, why did they get no DNA? They said she had had sexual intercourse around 4 days before her death. Why didn't they take that? Why didn't they keep samples of that if they thought that this was a murder? And according to her blood alcohol content at the time of her death, she was very intoxicated, according to them, and this could have left her very vulnerable. Maybe she didn't have sexual intercourse 4 days before she died. Maybe she was raped, and maybe it wasn't 4 days. According to the examination, she had been drowned around 24 hours prior, but it was unknown whether she was held under the water or it was simply so intoxicated that she fell in and drowned. She did have abrasions on her body. She had some bruises that had given police the idea that she could have been held down. Now, although she appeared to be in her mid-20s, the examiner put her down as being in her teens. This is what threw people off. People were thinking, okay, we're looking for a teenage runaway or a teenage girl, but it's possible that she was older than that. And if she was Sherry Jones, she would be around 28 years old. Here we get back into this story of this man. Now, this man, Charles Moore, says that he and his brother-in-law picked the two girls up on Interstate 24 10 days prior to her being found. They said that they were headed to Haines City, Florida. Now, he says here, this is where I kind of start web sleuthing. He says, we were headed to Chattanooga. We dropped them off. They got into another car, and we continued on our way towards Chattanooga. Now, he doesn't say they go all the way to Chattanooga. He just says that was their destination, was going towards Chattanooga, because Chattanooga is on the eastern side of Tennessee. This brings me back to Sherry Jones, who went missing from South Carolina. Could it be possible that the man's story was kind of bogus and that he actually picked her up near Chattanooga area and brought her back with him to Nashville? They do have this girl's dental records and her fingerprints. They don't have her DNA because the exact burial plot cannot be located. Someone in the comments asked the question, how did they possibly lose this girl's body? If they thought that this was a murder and they thought that this was unsolved, why did they not take better care of her body? Even though I want to say this myself, this is something I've been reading in the comments. the people have so much compassion for her, even though she could possibly have been from an abusive home or have been in an abusive relationship, was somewhat transient, traveling the roads trying to get from one location to another. Keep in mind, this was the 1970s. This was going on. People were hitchhiking a lot. This was before the media was running stories 24/7 about these horrible people out there picking up hitchhikers and murdering them. This was before internet. This person who's doing this story says, I have been searching for a photo of Shuri Jones for 5 years and have not been able to find one. They're hoping that maybe someone in Greer, South Carolina area remembers this Shuri Jones. Someone maybe has a picture of her in her school yearbook from, even if it was when she was younger, to compare to this Jane Doe. But unless they're able to find where she's buried and exhume her body, they can't compare her to anybody. So there's quite a few links about Shuri Ann Jones, but they all are pretty much the same, and there's no photographs of her. Maybe one day someone will come up with a photograph of her that even a composite. This person who came up and said, I think this might be my mother, Shuri Jones, does she not have a photo of this woman? We have, of, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, cousins, or anyone in Greer, South Carolina area remembers this Shuri Ann Smith Jones. And really, there's not much else to go on about her. It just describes her as a petite woman, 5'3" tall, 115 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. At the time of her disappearance, very little information was made public. She would be 78 years old if she were alive today. And there's really nothing else to go on. I hope one day to be able to come back and say, you know, here's a photo of her. Someone finally found one. Someone finally was able to recover the body of the Harpeth River Jane Doe. They were finally able to find where they had buried her and exhumed her body and got DNA and made a match. And now we know who she really was and how she came to be in Nashville, Tennessee. But as of right now, we don't know answers to either of these women's stories. My dog's running back and forth right now playing, so you guys, I apologize for that, but I just turned my phone on and started recording because I had this on my mind. This woman came forward years later and said, I believe this could be my mother, Shuri Jones, because the men claimed that the girl told them that her name was Shuri or Cheryl. Now, without her body, how would they get DNA from this woman to see if this could have been her mother or one of her other family members? But here's what got me to thinking about this. And like I say, I don't want to falsely accuse anybody, but the men's story, they picked her up hitchhiking in Nashville, but she was found deceased in Nashville or near the Nashville area. But if that was the case, then they didn't give her a ride for very far. They told police that they dropped the two girls off and that they got into the car with someone else. If I were a detective and I were investigating this, I would maybe have asked the question, well, if you were going toward Chattanooga and these girls told you that they were headed toward Florida, why would you have not continued with them on to Chattanooga? Because this would have gotten them several hours closer to their destination. It doesn't make a lot of sense that they claim that they picked them up near Nashville, dropped them off, and the girl was found dead 9 days later when they claimed that they were headed toward Chattanooga. As this video comes to an end, I would just like to remind everybody to please like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.